welcome back. This is part 5 of building the Prometheus. As previously discussed, this is going to be the primary layout for the lighting system. This tube here will act as a conduit to the pylons, and it will also serve as an access point for all the other LEDs that will illuminate the model. The engines, if I can bring them into focus. Oh, I'm about to have an accident there. The engines have had nearly a full week now for the bike oil to fully lubricate the multi-vector housing and ball joint, if that makes sense. So as you can see, this can be manipulated into various positions during flight, and I was about to say landing. So yeah, that's what she looks like so far. I never, as I said previously, expected to be so far along and to be discussing lighting. Yeah, I am surprised. Pleased and surprised at the same time. Now, that rustling you can hear in the background is me trying to... Let me show you. Here we go. I don't know if that's going to... what it's going to do. There we go, that's a 12 volt LED in there, and I've just got that running off a couple of batteries to demonstrate. Don't think we're really going to be able to really appreciate it in... let's see, there we go. So you can see how bright that actually is going to be. Now it is my plan, or as I said, I designed the lighting for this, that the Prometheus will have 50 plus LEDs. Now that might seem over the top, but those LEDs will basically service all the fibre optics, all the ports and windows and all the various lights that Prometheus is basically covered with. And she does have an awful lot of windows and I don't know, well, basically like the refit Enterprise, she's taken self-illumination to the limit, and the Prometheus is a very self-illuminated vessel. There we go, you can see that. So eventually these engines will be a mid blue as opposed to a light blue or crystal white, and I think these are crystal or bright white. Anyway, that's what it looks like. It's a very, very bright LED. So basically, I'll just drop that there. Doesn't matter that I've worked so hard on it. So basically my job is now to clean the surplus bike oil away from that, so that it doesn't prevent the primer or subsequent paint layers from adhering to the resin. Also, I'm going to join these two halves now and fill in various cracks and air bubbles and air pockets that have been left due to the manufacturing process. And then we'll start detailing various aspects of these engines, and they will need quite a bit of detailing as well as tidying up. But yes, we are beginning to lay down the foundation for the LEDs. I've also ordered a polyurethane tube for this section. I'm going to see whether or not I can use something that's whole as opposed to something that I've cut and reinforced. I mean, this is still a good idea, but being pernickety, yeah, I would like a whole structure rather than one that's being cobbled together almost. And if I've got a polyurethane tube, my perspex or my plexiglass might be able to adhere to it much more effectively, as opposed to trying to get something to adhere to this within the structure of the Prometheus. So I have fibre optics arriving this week, polyurethane tubing, brass tubing, LEDs, more LEDs, circuit board testers, you know, the works. I mean, the Prometheus is turning out to be quite a, how can I say, consumer of resources. Well, I never expected to spend so much money on her additionally, but it will be worth it. It will be worth it in the end. You know, she is coming along so nicely, and I'm really, really pleased. So, we have a bundle of stuff arriving this week to make her beautiful. And in the meantime, as I said, we'll be working on those engines, and we'll be laying down the groundworks for the LEDs. So, we'll be back tomorrow, and who knows what we'll have. So, good night for now, and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, good people. This is actually 2 or 3 days later, so I apologise. I've had so much going on in between, and I've not been at my best. I've been a bit poorly. Actually, I'm still a bit poorly. I've got a bit of a temperature, but hey ho, that's life. It goes on. But what I have done now is actually join these two halves together. Now, a clamp or a G-clamp is just too heavy duty for this, and due to the ergonomic shape and parabolic shape of the engines, it's not ideal for an ordinary clamp to be used, because you'd have difficulty in applying that clamp, so to speak. Rambling. So what I've done, I've bought some heavy duty elastic bands, I mean really heavy duty, and in this case they've worked beautifully. So what I'm going to do is remove these, and we'll be right back and we'll see the results. Okay, so we've removed all the elastic bands. The technique seems to have worked really well. We now have a whole solid unit. Also, here I've described the concentric circles that you can see on the engine units, each of the engine units. Each of these have panels, panel lines, panel details in each of the concentric circles radiating outwards. So that's something that I'm working on. I'm hoping to either scribe a little bit more and add those plates, or do that through paint. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet. The only problem now is that this section, which is part of the landing gear assembly, will not fit into the main body of the engine. So I'll have to undercut here again, make some alterations so that this can integrate with the engine unit. I've got some glue seepage, but that's just typical of mating two parts together. The inside is not too bad actually, so it's not too dirty. I do not have too much glue seepage and runs, which I just don't like really. So yeah. So here's a look at another engine which has been put together, but again we have the same issue with the landing gear assembly. On the other two engines, rather ironically, I still have a perfect fit, so I'll look at those closely, see what I've done, and just repeat this on the other two engines to reintegrate that part. But yes, using the elastic bands is an absolute great remedy in terms of joining two difficult shapes together, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a bit of tidying up. I will need to do some filling. Leave that there. So you can see some details just need to be resolved there. That's really good. It's really good. So yeah, really ecstatic about that actually. You can feel the weight, you can feel the sheer weight of these engine units now that they're coming along. They're actually quite heavy, and attached to the pylons and the fuselage of the model itself has become significantly heavier. And it's going to be even heavier by the time we add all the internals, all the lights, all the brass, etc. So yeah, we're going to have one heavy kit. She's going to weigh some by the time she's finished, or complete. So yeah, this is what we've done with the elastic bands, and I do highly recommend this technique for awkward shapes and awkward fittings. Just wrap a whole load of elastic bands around it. I spoke to Alan Urey with regards to mating these two surfaces together with the contact points, and like myself he suggested that you sand them off, but I thought I had second thoughts. I thought, let's have a wee look and see how this works. And pushing the two halves together by hand just didn't look as though it was going to work. It looked as though the two were going to be forced apart by those contacts. But with the elastic band, it really, really, really worked. So yeah, really, really worked well. Fantastically, in fact. So, and also this detail around here, which is really quite fragile. I've had no significant loss, cracks, or bits coming away, so that's still pretty much intact. It'll need building up and filling, of course, with milliput when I put when I complete it, because there are gaps around this section, the two halves, so milliputs can have to be applied there. Yeah. Also, I'm toying around with the idea of building this up with milliputs so that when I put the two halves together, we have an internal support. Some glue will go in here and attach to this improvised wall there, so that will give it some strength, some integrity. Yeah, making really, really good progress. In spite of having a few days off. Yeah, we're looking good for part 5. Some of these still need to be drilled through for the lighting, so we'll be doing that too. So I think we'll be back in a wee while. First, I apologise to the viewers and subscribers. It's been 9 months and I've not meant for this amount of time to lapse, but unfortunately life gets in the way. That's not to say I haven't been busy with personal projects, I've just not been busy with this personal project, the Prometheus. And we were making such a good time as well, so I'm doubly disappointed in that aspect. Also, I'll be publishing at some point other projects that we might find interesting. So there'll be 2 or 3 more postings besides the Prometheus project. So I've got a lot of work to be catching up with in terms of the old YouTube. So my apologies, and hopefully we'll get there together, and we'll end up with a nicely made model, a finished product. So thanks once again, and here we go. Right then, that particular tick has topped. Let's describe some more of what I've actually done to these engine modules. These power conduits, they've been tidied up. I've used a needle file to achieve this. Also, I've used the excess resin epoxy glue to fill in the gap that's between them. Here I've used some milliput. There was a substantial gap there as well, but it's been easily remedied. What I'm going to do is also I'm going to insert a piece of plastic sheeting to cover this, just in case there's any unevenness, which I won't be able to tackle due to the confined space. It's a technique I've used on my AMT Ertl B-wing. With the two halves there's this line, a seam, a join seam, which no amount of filling no amount of sanding is going to completely erase, so you have to get in there with the thinnest piece of plastic as possible. That being said, this area here, the epoxy resin acted as a filler, perfect filler actually, and all I had to do was just sand that back with a needle file and some sandpaper and some finishing cloth, and I've got a perfect finish there. So I can run my fingertip over that and I can barely feel where it's joined. The same here with this section. You can see it, but there's going to be the vent that covers that. So yeah. It's rather strange. There are areas on this model kit that are super detailed, and then other areas that are completely left blank. But I'm sure between some amount of scribing and paint detailing will remedy that. It's all smoke and mirrors, isn't it? Sometimes with models. But yeah. So if I just there we go. Focus that. Put that back in there. You can see areas that I've filled, built up. So that's turning out quite well actually. The grey-green milliput is ideal for that because it's especially hard. These areas of the model are building up nicely. Again, this is my favourite part. And you test fit, see how things are looking. And in spite of the elapsed amount of time, she's still gorgeous looking, and I'm still filled with enthusiasm, so to speak, although it doesn't look like it. I laugh with a great sense of irony. So for delayed part 5, I think that's going to do for now, and we'll see you soon, part 6. Now as to what I'll feature in part 6, I have yet to decide, but we'll leave it as a surprise, shall we? Okay then, good folks, until part 6, Prometheus signing off. No, this isn't a Star Wars special. This is actually an addendum to part 5. It's just to demonstrate what I was talking about previously in joining the two engine cowlings together, or the two halves of the engine cowling together, which left the seam between the two cooling conduits. The same applies almost to the B-wing, in that once you've joined the two halves, you have a seam in these intakes here, and there are three intakes. If we open the wings there, so we can see, let's see if we can get this into focus. There we are. So we've got three intakes. 1, 2, 3. Now what I have done with these, once the two halves were together, I got very thin slithers of styrene plastic and lightly glued them into space. Because of the thinness, you can't use too much glue, otherwise you'll just end up with one hell of a mess basically, and that, you know, the plastic is so thin that it will just melt, and well, you just have to start all over again, to be perfectly honest. But it's the same thing. Let's see if we can just, oh, we've got our hands full here, so just let me rest the B-ring down. Excuse my stomach. So there we go. So we basically have the same thing here between the two halves of the engine cowlings. So you've got a seam in between these two conduits, and what I will do, I will cut to size a thin slither of styrene plastic and epoxy into place, and that will make it nice and neat then. Minimum fuss, no filling in that regard. So yeah, just a little addition. Pop this back into place. Yeah, so this is it's actually a Star Wars first for me. Not actually presented any of my Star Wars models on YouTube, so this is a Star Wars first. As I said, it's not a Star Wars special, but yeah, this is my AMT Ertl B-wing. Accurized B-wing actually. This is way before Bandai's came on the market. I just used a ton of reference to make things accurate. Yeah, that's my B-wing. Right then. This is supposed to be the Prometheus signing off, but I think we'll sign off nicely with the B-wing. So, see you in part 6. Bye for now.